Have you considered the possibility that architecture is a fictional narrative, not a fact-based story? And Wikipedia can never confirm whether the story is false or true. Here's how that literary adventure works. The architect tells architecture's story, and architecture becomes the story the architect tells. The story needn't be chronological. It can originate at any point in time, and it isn't necessarily continuous. It stops if the architects digress. There are a number of expository possibilities. Sometimes the architect's story is sequential. It points the present forward or the future backward. Sometimes it's dialectical. It posits the past against the future or the present against the past. Sometimes it's teleological. It suggests a line to a goal or simply a new beginning. Narratives typically start and stop, but the architecture story is perpetually incomplete. Soon enough, in a historical sense, the future will become the present the past, and the future prospect is again rewritten. Emphases change, heroes and villains trade places, and each narrator has the opportunity to alter the vantage point of the narrative. If new architecture makes a case, the new case amends the architecture story. Odile Decq's story is a story in process. It's autobiographical. Odile's work is Odile's subject. The architect as superhero, subverting an entrenched and retrogressive culture. The winner builds, and the builder writes the history books. Watching a Lufthansa film the other day, I saw a scrawny kid strapped to a machine by a mad scientist who turns on the juice, and in traditional comic book fashion, the kid is transformed as a muscular American hero who smashes the Nazis with his titanium shield. But Captain America isn't Captain Odile. The Odile ideal is Pandora, the lady who opened and closed the famous box. Dangerous curiosity, prone to big mischief, and the salient ingredient is hope. The Odile story confronts an inevitable time lag because the established culture is reluctant to acknowledge her nascent prognosis. Meaning, if Odile's right, the standard pro forma is wrong. Odile's future is an attack on a predictable present. Odile appears first as a villain in her story. Heroes often do. She meets resistance, resists the resistance. She speculates the world could be other than it is, and her architecture might make it so. But will it? Let's find out. Please welcome Odile Decq to SCI-Arc.
Thanks a lot, Eric. I don't feel as an hero, you know. I'm just feel as an architect. And, oh yeah, I have to change the slide because I'm not Captain America and not even Captain France. And I'm beyond horizon. But no, first of all, I have to say that I thank you, Eric, because it's my third time in SCI-Arc. And the first time it was a long time ago in the other building before, and I was just showing some project, and now it's more and more. So I just, and I'm always impressed by the fact that this building is a place for experimentation and creation. But last time, it was 5 years ago, and I still saw many, many models everywhere, many strange objects, strange things everywhere. Now I saw many computers. So times have changed, maybe, and some robots. So the school is changing, the process is changing, architecture is changing too. But I still believe in models, sometimes more than in computers. So, beyond the horizon, for me, it's a question of how to go further, to never stop to something which is exactly the predictable, the thing that what you see is not where you are going, but you have to adjust your goal to navigate and to go to sell until the end. But the end is never reached, because when you sell to the horizon, when you reach the horizon, what you believe where you wanted to go, the horizon is still in front of you. So you have to go further and further and further. So this is a sort of a metaphor for me for architecture and for doing a project, to sell to the horizon. The first is homeostasis. Homeostasis is a piece that we did in an art gallery. We renovated an art gallery close to the office some years ago, and the man in charge of this gallery asked us to be the first exhibition. So I didn't want to have an architecture exhibition because it's an art gallery. So we did that, and I remember this little sketch that I was drawing for the people in the office, to explain what is, for me, the dynamic equilibrium with two weights, which are in distance for certain distance, and that we can build, and we build that in a very particular piece with one balloon of air of 2 meters diameter, and one smaller from sand inside an aluminum bubble. And in between, the beam is 6 meters long, but it's a very small one because it's 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters. And it's put above the column, in a way, without fixation. And that means that it can move when you pass by, because when you pass by, the displacement of the body, of the human body, is moving the balloon of air. And it's create the instability, but it's stable. And it come back to 20 years ago when we did this installation in Grenoble, in Le Magasin, in an art place, where it was a sort of expression of a space, but an in-between space, and in-between spaces with layers of cardboard and steel, where you can pass in between. You can walk in between. At the end, we had a mirror, and this mirror inclined is reflecting the ceiling under your feet. So you have the impression that the perception of space is destabilized, is transformed, and you don't keep your own reference because the space is something else. It's perceived as something else. I start by showing a lot of little things which are a sort of training for architecture, but I love more and more to do something like that. This was a model for a garden that we did in 2000 for a festival of garden in France, and it was a question of how to express the light from the Highlands in Scotland in a very little tiny garden of 300 square meters. We lift up the grass, the ground, and we install some fogs inside because the grass was lifted up, and we have the white white textile, which creates some spaces inside this little garden. And thanks to the fog, we have the transformation of the perception of the space, like you have in Highland in Scotland, when you have the sun, the fog, the rain, and the wind at the same time in the one landscape. But here in a very little tiny garden. In New York, we did, in 2004, this installation that I called central hypertension. The first one that we did in Grenoble was called hypertension, and this one is central hypertension. It's just a sort of a cabinet that we built where the walls inside were not vertical, were not parallel, but inclined in different ways and painted in white or mirrored, covered. And by projection on the mirrors, on the white walls, we created other space by the fragmentation of the walls, because the corner that you look at doesn't exist. This is just a representation of the way we played with the walls, and it was a transformation and a sort of a virtual space in real. And we created we discovered some spaces not built inside this installation. And another garden that we did 3 years ago, the thematic of this festival was colors, and we decided to build a black garden without plants, without flowers. It was just an installation of glasses, glass sheets, around black glass sheets around a surface, and this surface was filled up with powder of fire powders that very thick that you can, when you walk, it's absorbing all the sound, it's absorbing everything, and in the middle a little part of water on a black surface. So this place was a very introverted space, introverted place, a place without colors, a place which was silencious and absorbing everything from the outside inside. Last year, we have been invited by Vuitton, who was on the top of the Champs-Élysées. They have a place on the top of their building for art. And they asked us to do an installation of the terrace. So we built a sort of a jump, a place for jumping over Paris, or flying over Paris. And it was just a ramp with 2 walls, sheet of glass, but covered with specific film, which is perceived like translucid, opaque, when you are from inside and you are looking in front of you. But if you turn, so you can't look through when you are looking in front of you, but if you turn your eyes and you look perpendicular to the glass, it's transparent, but it's partially transparent. So this is a place where you were walking in between 2 walls, and sometimes if you turn your body, you discover that you can look through and you see the roofs of Paris. And at the end, you can fly if you want and go over Paris. And last month, we came back to the gallery, the art gallery close to the office. He asked us to take the space again, and we installed some mirrors or some sheets of glass again. So first we did these 2 mirrors, silver mirrors, and on the back black mirrors, and in the corner these black mirrors too. And we played with the space itself by the self-reflection into the mirrors, etc., and the transformation and the infinite reflection of the space or party of the space inside the mirrors that destruct or deconstruct the perception of the space itself. So when you enter inside the gallery, you discover through the mirror the space behind the mirrors, and you discover that the space that was supposed to be on the left is on the right, and at the same time it's reflecting infinitely inside the mirrors. So you don't know where, you discover that you lose your system of perception inside these mirrors. And at the very extreme end of the space, because the real space is on the right, we add this mirror on the back, on the top of the wall, and it creates the impression that there is a space behind the wall. It was a question of passing through the mirror, the way to pass through the mirror. It's a question of Alice. But at the same time, it's a question that what I wanted to express the fact that what you see is not what you look at, and when you look at, it's not what it is. It's a question of perception again, and transformation of perception. So the fluorescent lights of the ceiling are reflected infinitely inside the black mirror on the top of the wall, and in the corner, there is something else, another space behind the mirror. This is untrue. It doesn't exist, because we are on the top of the wall. And we built this object, which is not flat, which this is a sort of perspective in between pieces of plastic, tubes of plastic, but a twisted shape, a virtual volume in a way. So, we go to Rome now. Rome, the photos is, the colors are strange. I know that the projector is transforming the colors, but this is, I never saw so much blue in Rome. But, so, we are in Rome, and Rome is a place where you don't see that on this image, but sometimes you discover that there are gardens on the top of the buildings. There are gardens, there are spaces on the top of the buildings, because the roofs are uninhabited. There is people living down, and this is places to live. We are here for the museum. That means close to the old fortification of the Roman fortification. I can show that? Yes. No. It's green, but green on green, it doesn't work. So we are on the outside of the fortification. We are in an old brewery, which was established at the beginning of the 20th century, like that. Our site is behind this former building that I show you, on this site, which was filled up with these little buildings when we started the project. And we discovered that, and we had to keep the structure of the roof, which is absolutely not historical, but it was for the architect in charge of the historical monument, a trace of industrial in the city center. So they renovated this former building in yellow before that we went, and they built this glass roof above the courtyard. So we were supposed to extend the former building. It doesn't work. Okay. No. Doesn't matter. So the former building was these two parallel buildings, and we are supposed to build all the other part, to rebuild all the other part. And we discovered the difference in between the former entrance and the corner of our site, in between at the corner of the two streets on the back side, and the difference of levels of 4.5 meters. The new entrance at the corner of the two streets is 4.5 meters below the former entrance. And thanks to that, because we had to keep also the facade, we stayed behind the facade, and we can dig the floor and created a building inside or behind the facades on the two streets. And this building has no facade. We just add a little corner of glass, which creates a new entrance, and we rebuilt everything inside. And because of this level, this difference of level, we use that to the benefit of the project by taking ramps from the courtyard to go up to the roof and down to the main hall, down into the museum, because it was not so big differences. And the roof is, as I saw you in Rome before, this is a place to live. It's a place to stay. And in this area, we didn't have so many squares, and Rome is it's a city for squares. So we built a square in the middle of an area which didn't have before. And we built that square at the second floor level, around with the building around, which are at the second level. So first, to start the project, we started by doing models, and we played with different objects, and we add some objects, and we created and we manipulate forms and objects and materials on the model. At the end, it will become something else. But at the beginning, it's not the project. It's just ideas that we manipulate in models. And it's becoming more and more the building itself, the project itself. And after winning the project, we continue to manipulate models to manipulate the object, to manipulate the space, to create different shapes and to adjust the volumes of everything by doing a lot of models. Until the end, until the last one, which is really the established project, where you see that the facade is keeping, but inside, this is another universe. Because we are in Rome, and because of this protection for historical monument, we were thinking that we can't, we were not allowed to build an outside facade, so we had to do something discrete from the outside. That means that with this corner and the new entrance below, we can say, okay, we are here, but here, inside, we built another place. So this is the reality now. So this is this little corner that we built by destroying the corner, the angle of the facades. And this is a glass box, which is a cafe in the street, suspended above the street. And in the courtyard, the former courtyard, we created the ramps with some stairs to go up, because the building is not anymore yellow, now it's painted in gray. So that means it's going more to our buildings than we came to their building. So we didn't build our building yellow, we built it black. So we painted the old one in gray. And the ramp and the stairs are going up to the terrace on the right, and down, we can go down to the main hall by this stair. Oh my God, it's blue now. So the terrace is not blue, it's gray, it's dark gray, believe me. You have a strange projector. Because on my computer, it's perfect. We tried to adjust before, but... So this is the terrace. This is the roof. This is a terrace, but this is a square. And this square has a fountain, and the fountain is this glass box in the middle, inclined, but the water was not working when we took this picture, but the water is running above this oblique surface to refresh the place, like everywhere in Rome, with every square has a fountain, and along the fountain, on the beside of the fountain, we have a restaurant. So the restaurant is in the old structure that we had to keep behind the glass facade with black tiles, because we can remove the tiles, and we took black tiles. So everything is dark, black, and we played with the volumes and the surface of this terrace and this square to make people walking and feeling their own body. Because I wanted that people, for discovering a museum, will refer to their own body by their own gravity. Because I think that when you build a museum for contemporary art, the contemporary art is not easy for people to go in because it's questioning much more than giving answers, and people are not easy going to visit the art. But the visit of the building gives them the possibility to discover. So that means that I wanted to create some promenades through the building, and we had different ways of going to the art, and one is going to the terrace. But we can go to the terrace, that means to the rooftop, without going to the museum. You can enter from the courtyard, taking the ramps and the stairs to go to the top, and after that, if you want, you can go down by a staircase going directly to the street. That means that you can cross the building without entering to the museum, inside the museum, but going to the terrace through the glass structure, you can have some views, some perspectives to the art, and you have the curiosity after that to go there. So that means that it's a sort of a discovery through the promenade, through the building, to go to the art show. And in the night, everything is lighting. The glass surfaces are lighting. The glass fountain, which is not working now. The restaurant on the right, and this long ribbon of glass, which is partly above the exhibition room and partly above the main hall. And the fountain is belonging to the outside, as everywhere in Rome, in the square, but also to the inside, because it's transparent. Oh my God, the pictures are very strange colors. So now we come in. So we come in by going under this glass box, under the cafe, which is reflecting sometimes, but it's not a reflective glass. It's a transparent glass. And we have to walk inside this little garden, and this little garden is after passing under the cafe, and you discover that there is a little courtyard, and this courtyard has the cafe around it, and the cafe, the glass facade of the cafe could be open to the garden. We go in, and inside there are many, many ways, as I said before, to go and to discover the building and to walk the building. There are ramps, there are pass rails, there are staircases, and we have the main auditorium in the middle as the heart of the place. And this auditorium is built as a monolith, and this monolith seems to be in not in equilibrium, because we dig the floor below, we face it with different shapes which are not very symmetrical. And this is like a strange object in the middle of the space with a place above it under the fountain. And to go in, you have to take the ramp. And the ramps are passing through the space to travel the museum, to travel the place, and to go to discover the art. Inside, everything is red. Outside, it was matte red, and inside is bright red. And the bright red is playing like an art installation with the light and the seat that we designed with the lamps, etc. And the exhibition room. And the exhibition room is a huge space of 1,000 square meters. And it's a quiet space, because everywhere it's black and red. But the exhibition room is white. And it's concrete on the floor, but only the ceiling is black to make it disappearing. But at the same time, when we started to work on this project, I remembered a discussion between Frank Gehry and Daniel Buren, which was edited in a book. And it was a discussion where Frank Gehry was discussing with Buren about the neutral white box for a contemporary art museum. And Daniel Buren said, not necessarily. a contemporary art museum doesn't have to be necessarily white and neutral. It could be a place, it could be a space where the artists are confronted to, and where the artist can, the space could resist to the artist, but not so much. So I was thinking that for the exhibition room I have to stay calm, but so it's why the walls are vertical, the place is easy to exhibit, the place is easy to work with, but everywhere else I can play with another way. And the only things that I wanted to have is this passage, this way, this passerelle, this promenade in the middle of the space and in the height of the space, to have a sort of another view from above to the place, to the exhibition room and to the art. And that means that you can have a third and last travel through this, by this passerelle above the art. To go to and it's going from the main hall to the terrace with passing by the exhibition room without staying inside. And the toilets. The toilet is a place that you have to visit. It's a place, it's a stainless steel box inserted under the old structure where everything is covered by this stainless steel, and in the middle of the space you have this white cube or parallelepiped, and the both extremity of the place is mirror. So the space is reflected infinitely inside the itself. And this white box in the middle is a place where you can wash your hand, but there is no taps, there is nothing seen, there is just a depressing landscape that you don't see on the screen. And as soon as you manipulate your hands above this box, it becomes red. And the water is coming up. So you see the depression of the glass above, and somewhere you see a little bit of the water coming up, and there is a dryer which is going up at the corner, and the soap is in another depression somewhere else. So you have to manipulate your hands, you don't touch anything, and you find the water, the soap, and the dryer. And this is a bookshop, full of ugly objects, but as usual. And we designed door handles for the museum. Door handles, bottom, and for the sliding doors. And on the terrace, we have these lamps that we designed with Luce Plan, and it's a javelot. And these javlots could be with this mast, and it's on the terrace to have an outside terrace for the restaurant behind the glass. And inside the restaurant, there are hundreds, and this is the hanger of Zeus in the ceiling of the restaurant. And in the cafe, we have these colorful chairs inside the glass box, and the glass box in the middle of the street because of the corner of the turning of the street. And now, oh my God, opera in Paris. Back to Paris now. So this is the Opera Garnier. And 3 years ago, I received a call from a man who asked me if I was interested to design a restaurant for the Opera Garnier. And I said, why not? And he came to me, and we started to work together. And now it's open since last July. So we have to establish a restaurant behind these columns that you see in the middle of the picture. It was a cupola where before it was an outside space, an outside place where before the carriage were driving to make people coming in under the cover of the cupola, to come inside in the middle of the opera. And it was for the people who had already their tickets. But after the Second World War, it was not yet used, and it was covered by palisade, and they used the space as a storage for the workshop, which was just close to there. So nobody thought about this space anymore. And, but the president of the opera 4 years ago decided to renovate the opera and to work with the transversal axe of the opera. Because usually when you come to the opera, you know precisely this one, this facade, with the staircase, the stairs, and inside you discover the big staircase to go to the main room. But there is another axe, because the first one is longitudinal and this one is transversal. And on the opposite, we are on the east facade, and on the west facade, this is the emperor ramp, because this building was being done in the middle of the 19th century with Napoleon III, and it has been opened by Napoleon III and the Emperatrice. But at the same time, it was providing on the west facade a ramp for the carriage of the emperor to come in directly to the opera. But the other people were coming in on the east facade. So they decided to create this transversal axe and to have the restaurant on the east facade. So I discovered when I started to design that it was prohibited to touch to the columns, to the pillars, to the walls, and to the ceiling. I had to create a facade without touching anything. I had to create a second floor inside the space because they wanted to have my client, which is the manager who won the competition for managing the opera, had wanted to have 160 seats, and it was too small to have all of them on the first floor. So I had to create a floor. And when I met the architect in charge of the historical monument at the first time, they said to me, you are not allowed to create a facade, you are not allowed to create a floor, because Charles Garnier didn't do that. And the Opera Garnier was, they told me that the Opera Garnier was a more looked building for historical monument because it was untouched since Charles Garnier. So I said, okay, yes, but I have to create a restaurant. So I decided to, so my first idea was, if you look at this plan, but okay. So this is a place with a cupola, with all the columns around. And we have a bigger space, but not so big. And I decided not to create the facade by having the glass facade in between the pillars, but to have a sinuous line behind the pillars, which is turning and undulating behind, and by using it, okay. No, it doesn't work. I can't see it. Do you see something with a green point? No.
It's too...
It's too bright now.
No.
Doesn't matter.
It works.
It works? Okay. I have to push a lot. So this undulating line is the glass facade. And because it's undulating, all the sheets of glass are curved, and they could be self-stable. And they have to be absolutely transparent because they told me that it has to be perceived as it is not there. That means that it has to be not seen, and you have to use a very transparent glass without frames. So it's what I did. And to create the mezzanine, because, no, this is not that way. For the mezzanine, I started to do curves again, or lines, to turn around the pillars, because pillars are there, not touching the pillars, turning around. And I had a drawing at the beginning which was coming there, but they asked me to push back to let this pendentif, the top of the cupola, seen from below. So to push back, and I wanted to go to the facade, so it was a negotiation for this line, to create this line, because I wanted that the people on the mezzanine could be close to the facade, and they wanted me to go back. So it was a negotiation. And we turned around the pillars, and we create this very strange form. which is given by the constraints. And at the same time, if you look carefully, it looks a little bit like the mask of Scream. It's why we call it the phantom. And in the opera Garnier, there is a story with the phantom, so this is the phantom of the opera. So this is one of the entrances on the both sides. And the frame is inside the glass, and we just connect to the one joint in between the stones here. And the undulating glass behind the columns, the facade. We could be able to have the sheet of glass going directly to the top, but it was impossible to manipulate them inside the space. So we cut them at 6 meters high. That means at the height of the cornice inside the building. And so this is 6 meters, and after that it goes to the cupola with different height from 2 meters to 2.5 meters. And the glass is absolutely transparent, but because of the curve of the glass, the reflection is particular. And the mezzanine is like an object flying above the rotund, the cupola. And we have these little columns that we created because the only place that we can remove was the floor. Because before it was an outside space, and we could create an inside space. That means changing the floor. That means that you can have these columns supporting the cupola, the mezzanine in cantilever from far away. And because of this surface, and this is plaster, with a steel structure inside. And the steel structure is thin, and the plaster is molded around. But when doing that, that means that we created empty columns. And this is exactly, I discovered that it was exactly what Charles Garnier did in the middle of the 19th century. Because what you see in stone is not the structure of the building. It has some steel structure in the middle of the pillars, and the stone, it's just a decoration. Because Charles Garnier used the steel for building the structure, and in between the structure and the stones, he put the shaft for ventilation and heating the Opera Garnier. And we did the same because inside our columns we have the steel structure, and in between we have some shafts, electricity, some cables, everything, because there is no mechanical scene inside this restaurant. Everything is inside the columns and inside the floor and the ceiling above. And we had to create a sort of surface, not flat, for the acoustic reason, and everything is evolving and transforming and never repeating. With a carpet which is inside the mezzanine, going down on the stair, and like a surface, irregular surface on the floor, for acoustic and for the comfort of the people. And we designed the chairs, the armchairs, the table, everything. And on the back, on the very back side of the restaurant, at the frontier with the room behind, there are doors in between the columns, and it's going to the doors are on this side, to go to the opera. But we had a lounge with a sofa, a very long, sinuous sofa. And the mezzanine. Everything is red inside. So there's two different ambiances, one down and one above. And I sometimes say that if you go with your husband, you go down. If you go with your lover, you go on the top. Because this is more intimate. This is different, and you could be hidden. So this is not a model, but it looks like a model. This is an object that now we created from the mezzanine in black. And this is in porcelain. So, at the moment we are doing this building, which is another museum in France, and more parallelepiped. It's in Rennes, in Bretagne, in the west of France, and we are on the border of a park with an art piece of a minimalist French artist who died after doing this piece, and she was old because she was 92 when she died, and it's 72 stones of granite of 4.5 meters height, and playing with the number 9. That means that they are 72 centimeters by 81 centimeters and 4.5 meters height. And this artist gave to the building the constraints. So usually you build the building and you have the art after, but art was first, and she was asked what she wanted for the building, and she said that she wanted to have a very silencious facade, and that the building is not lighting her piece. So because of the condition of the brief, we had to fulfill the volumes that they gave us. That means our site is a rectangular, and we have a certain height. So it's very dense, very, very enclosed space. So I decided to cut it with this oblique inside and to create a vertical space from the ceiling to the storage 8 meters below the ground floor, and to create a vertical promenade, but very narrow, with ramps turning around the lift and the void in the middle. With a silencious facade made of steel above the line of 4.5 meters in relation to the top of the stones here, and glass below. The steel is black, mirrored black, becoming more mirrored, and the glass is black, becoming more transparent. That means that in the day, it's very black, and in the night, it will be lighted from inside. And inside because this is the main hall, and above this is the main exhibition room, all the length of the facade, and it's in cantilever, suspended to this concrete black box on the back, and it's in steel. And we decided to paint the ceiling of the main hall in red to have an auditorium, because we had to have an auditorium very long, very narrow in red, like a black red box, and to light that in the night, that it's just reflecting a little bit of light outside without lighting the piece of Aurélie Nemours. So when we will enter the building, we will enter on the B-side, and seeing this void, where you can go down to go to the storage, but so you don't go, and you can't enter inside this void. You have to turn around this auditorium to walk along the facade, in between the glass facade and the auditorium, in a very narrow space of 1.5 meters, to go to the end and to enter the space in this oblique by the ramps, turning around the lift in the middle. And in between the auditorium and the ceiling, we have at the very extreme point only 80 centimeters, but not connected. So it's under construction and it will be finished next spring. So this is this black surface, and the black concrete, which is not totally black, it's perceived as black when it's raining. Usually it's dark gray. And inside, the structure of the auditorium, the structure of the void, so the same perspective that you saw in the renderings, but not yet finished. Some staircase, just sheet of metal inserted in the walls. So, next time I will show you the result. So this is another project under construction again. We are in Lyon, this time in France, south of France, southeast of France. And Lyon is a city where we have two rivers, the river Rhône and the river Saône, and in between them we had a peninsula. And this peninsula was an industrial harbor that the city took off. And now it's a transformation for the city, and they built 1 million square meters on this area for residential, for offices, for commercial, etc. This is a new area just close to the city center. And we still have these cranes, which remains on site, and a company which is the company which is managing all the rivers and canals in France is the owner of the site on the riverside. And they have here the old building for the sugar, the old building for the salt, and the old dogana. The old customs building, excuse me, I speak Italian now. So they did a competition for building new buildings, new pavilions. And Jacob and McFarlane built this one and this one. I won this one, and Ricciotti won this one. So I'm doing this one, and Copy Melblow, Wolf Prix is building his museum. We are just on both sides of the end of the peninsula. With a train passing here, and the motorway passing away underneath, and an old railway track here. So my building is a box, a glass box with another box above. And this box is perpendicular to the other one, and I pass in cantilever above the quay to go to the river. That means that this box above of 4 floors is in cantilever of 24 meters to go to the river. And for doing that, we have created 3 big pillars of steel inside the atrium in the middle to hang and to support a huge structure on the 4th floor, and the huge structure on the whole floor is hanging all the floors below. Everything is hanging to the big structure on the top. And when on the quay here, when you will walk here, you will see through the glass roof here to the atrium, to the roof, etc. We propose to have a parking, but now we have only 1 level of parking, not these 5 levels. So we are just in cantilever here with all these main beams hanging to hang all the floors below. We are on site, and the pillars are coming. And the beams too. It was last week. So they are really huge and enormous. This is 4 meter or 4.5 meters height. We designed the lamps for the offices. It's something acoustic and lighting. And we have been asked to design a restaurant in front of our building on the river, a floating restaurant on the river. So we proposed to play with bubbles, because in the river we had bubbles. And we proposed to have all these bubbles, 1 for the entrance, 1 for the toilets, 1 for the kitchen, 1 for the bar, for the lounge, 1 for the restaurant, and 1 for the cafe. And to have them like that, like different ways of covering them. And the restaurant like a basket inside the river, and some terrace like basket on the opposite basket, and inside the restaurant, and that's all. And they told me that they asked me that if I can propose a boat for the river, because they have two rivers, and they have many people going from one side of the city to the other side. So I propose at this time these boats, but finally we don't. They started to ask if we want to develop. So we found a company in Paris who wanted to develop that for Lyon. And, but when they did the competition, they asked us to redesign. So we redesigned another way, absolutely another way, like that, which is absolutely different. But because we were supposed on this proposal to reuse a former shape of a boat and to remap it, to reshape it. But they didn't win, so we will not build them. And at the moment we are working on the sea passenger terminal in Tangier for the new harbor in Tangier, which is established 30 kilometers on the east of the old city of Tangier. And they decided, and they built already the container harbor here. They will do a second container harbor in between the sea passenger terminal. And we were supposed at the beginning to design only the terminal, but we had to redesign and to design everything. The terminal is this little object with the lounge here. That was the one we proposed, but as we won in 2007, they asked us to redesign and to rethink all the plan and to reorganize everything. The place for the control of the tickets, the customs and the police on the both side, on the both way of going in and going out, the train which is going to the terminal as a train station and go a bit further, the motorway is passing above, the cars and buses are going there to park behind the terminal, and the cars and passengers are going through this control to go to the terminal, and after that to go to the lounge and to the little satellites at the end of all these piers. And we have to park all the cars and the trucks. So we propose this terminal because it's a very giant project, because it's a mountain which was falling down to the sea, but they cut it to build first the motorway, after that to create the train, to create this control place with the car park here, and this platform with all the cut materials that they put on for creating the car park below. And because this is a passenger terminal for boats, it's not like an airport, but it works like an airport, but it's not like an airport, because you don't deposit your luggage. You travel with your luggage from your car, from your bus to the boat. And sometimes you have to walk a long way with all your luggage. And can you imagine Moroccan people going out to go to live in Europe during the year, so living in September, end of the summer, when the tourists are coming at the beginning of the summer with them, and they go back. So it's two different type of populations. The tourists going into Africa for summer, for holidays, and the Moroccan people, or some African, others African, going in Europe to work and going back to visit their families during the summer. So all this population are mixing inside the terminal, but at the same time they don't feel the same. And we wanted them to be and to stay comfortable even if they travel with a lot of luggage. So we wanted to because now the new ferries have a certain height for the doors, and which is 7 meters above the ground, when it depends of the level of the sea, but they manage that. So that means that we can have with this little satellite or the lounge the same level than the entrance, and the same level as the second room after having been entering inside the terminal on the main room, the main hall. So you go down to pass all the control down by staircase and lifts, and after that you walk flat to the boat. That means that it's easier than going up and down, taking staircase, etc. Because this is a place where it's not comfortable. The other question is the question of the sun, because you stay sometimes for years, for hours on the car park, and you are under the sun. So we wanted to have some places for some trees, but not so many because they have to reorganize the car park all the time, and to use the satellite and the lounge as places where you can go down underneath to stay under the shadow. And the path rails are covered to go and to travel horizontally to the ferries. And the lounge has 3 levels. The level for people waiting from the cars, going from the cars and providing shadow underneath. And they can go up here to find toilets or drinks. The people from the path rail on this level and some VIP on above. In the night. So for the moment, this project has stopped and is supposed to restart in 2 years because they have some economic problem. And I'm not sure that they will continue. And the other problem was the question of the wind, because it's a place where we have a constant wind of 10 knots every day. And 80% of the year it's coming from the sea, so it's a salted wind. And 20% of the year it's coming from the desert, so it's a sandy wind. That means that we have to care a lot with the materials. And it's a steel structure because we are in a very high seismical place, because it's in between Mediterranean and Atlantic, and at this place are 2 tectonic plaques sliding together. And at the same time, we have to cover it by concrete for the maintenance of the building, to be able to stay and to keep it without too much maintenance. So, another floating object, because now I'm doing a lot of floating objects. In Paris, on the River Seine, I won a competition for a floating object close to the Grand Palais, because this is the Grand Palais. Oh, again, yes, here, the Louvre, the Museum Louvre is here. So the Champs-Élysées are here. So the site is here, in between these 2 bridges. It's a project, a very little project, and it's for offices and event and restaurant. But offices and event and restaurant have the same surfaces. That means 600 square meters both. And I don't like this equilibrium or this symmetry. So I try to figure how to manipulate the objects and to create 2 objects connected together. And having discovered this drawing in astrophysics, this is anisotropy, a spatial anisotropy. And this is how the scientists describe the spatial anisotropy as a place where the universe is going down to the black hole, and the space and the surface of the space is distorted when the universe is reinversed. So, this is only what I can explain for the scientific approach. But I reuse this drawing that I discovered from the scientific approach to use a ribbon from the inside of a volume, describing an atrium, going outside to describe the volume itself, and going down to describe the interior of another object, another volume. So, this is a ribbon, and this is the object. This is the part for the offices. The outside surface of the ribbon, like a submarine in Paris, and the other one. So you see the inside of the atrium, the outside surface described, and the inside of this below volume inside the river. Because this one has 3 levels, one inside the river and 2 over, and this one is only inside the river for the restaurant and event. So now they will not build it as offices, but they are working with a developer to do it as an hotel for 10 bedrooms on the River Seine. So we are working on that now. 2 years later, another company came to me and proposed me another project on the other side. We were there, and now they proposed me this site to create a floating garden on the river. So we thought about the mangroves. Oh my God, it's coming too fast. But the floating gardens, oh, what happens? I don't touch. And we created an archipelago of floating objects, floating volumes, gardens connected by passerelles, greens, gardens inside the river, and a main one with meeting rooms inside and places for people to come in. Oh my God, it's... Again, like the basket that we proposed for Lyon. And this is supposed to be developed at the end of this year. So I'm waiting now. And what is that? And we won a competition in another city, in Laval, in the west of France, which for the office for the tourism office on the river. So we are now doing a lot of objects on the rivers. So this is what we proposed. This is this little 500 square meters volume covered by a membrane with a vortex in the middle, which is a meeting room, and to build it in wood. This is the first time that I propose something in wood. So we propose that volume because in this city, they have the tradition of what we called bateau lavoir, but in English that means that is a place where, a floating place where the people in the, just after the Second World War again, but now, not now, went to wash their things inside the river. So it's a place, it's not a place where usually when the old woman went to a certain place in the village to wash the things, or the textile, etc., or the clothes, but usually it's close to a fountain. Here it was on the river, in a specific places built in wood on the river. So there is a tradition, and there are still 3 or 4 of these specific boats. And we propose that in the tradition of this, it's why we propose it in wood, but in another shape, with another forms, and with another with a membrane cover it, to be able to have that lighted in the night, to have like a lantern. And the wood structure will be like a place to go inside, in the middle of the city. So this is just 2 rooms that I proposed for an hotel in Beijing. It's a client who wanted to build an art hotel, and we proposed to have 2 specific, and we were supposed to work with an artist, and I worked with an artist, a Chinese woman working in between Beijing and New York, and we proposed a rock or a garden bedroom to have the bed and all as an object, like a space. What is doing? Why? Why is doing that without me? I'm not doing that. So you see the 2 bedrooms. One is green, the other one is black and red. This one is a suite with 2 levels, with suspended bubbles for the main bed, or the main bedroom inside the main space, and the other room. Okay, so it's stopped now, so I go to the sailing boat. It's easier. So we did a sailing boat. I know that here you know what is sailing, but we did a huge super yacht. It's 140 feet long, and the mast is 50 meters high. And it's a sailing boat with a flat deck, a flush deck in wood, that we redesigned entirely to have a complete continuous surface, to insert the only objects that we had to have on the top of the deck inserted inside the wood surface, and to develop the surface and with the shipyard. And to insert the windows, not as a windows with a frame, but as a sheet of glass, black, inserted inside the wood, on the both sides of the boat, to light in the day the space below from the both sides, and in the night to have the same place with the light, artificial light coming up from below, surrounding the space of the deck during the night. Inside, it's a continuous surface, because what I don't like in the huge boat is because they want to have a lot of cabins, because they want to rent the boat, but this client didn't want to rent the boat, so he wanted to have, we started to discuss to design it as a loft, as a flexible space, and to build everything flexible by sliding partition to describe, for example, this is a bedroom, this is a cabin, but you can have the continuity of the space of the cabin when you don't use it with the main room, the living room here, and the continuity here with this little place in between, because everything is inside this box. Inside this box, we have the sliding partition. And the same here for this sliding partition between the kitchen and the central place here, where the staircase is going up to the central room on the deck. And the only stable place is the machine rooms here, a huge one. So we had to have a corridor. And this corridor is not continuous, is not with a regular shape because of the shelves that we hang on this wall, and because of the transformation of the length of the width here. And the owner cabin, where is it? It's really hurting my thumb. I can't. So, and the owner cabin is at the end with, okay, I will show you the images. So we are with the corridor on the left, the central point with the kitchen on the back on the right side, the little stairs going up, and the red object is a bar, and it's split in two because you can have a sliding partition, a sheet of glass passing in the middle to separate the kitchen from the central point, central space. And the owner cabin, we designed everything in that place, the bed. And the bed is, on its back, a thick partition, because this thick partition is containing the sliding part of the partition to separate the bedroom from the bathroom behind. And the bathroom on the back has a long mirror wall to create and to increase the perception of the space, because the bathroom, even if it's 7 square meters, is a small space in that boat. And the bathroom itself is a flexible space because the floor could be lifted up. You see it, perforated floor could be lifted up and hidden inside the partition to use the floor as a bathtub. And if you cover the bathtub, you can have the shower because the shower is in the ceiling. So this is a normal space, but it could be the shower, it could be the bathtub, it could be the bathroom. And this is the wash basin of the owner cabin, but you don't see precisely where it's finishing, where it is ending, because it's ending in the mirror wall, and it's doubling. And this is in the cabin for the visitors. It's a little object that we built for the wash basin, but also for different storage. 10 years ago, we did furniture for the UNESCO headquarters in Paris. This is the main counter of the UNESCO in the main hall, for the conference main hall. And they asked me to do that contemporary, even if this building is old, because it's from the 50s. And it has been done by Marcel Breuer with the engineer Pierre-Luigi Nervi. And it's in concrete, and it's a place where the concrete is really voluptuous, I can say that. It's sensible, and it's played with curved, with transformation of perception, where the columns inside the main hall in this conference hall can start round, become ovoid, and finished rectangular. Or it could be the inverse. Every column is different. And when you go in the main conference room, you discover that you enter under dressed by Issey Miyake, but in concrete. This is the continuity of the walls and the ceiling with a pleated concrete, which is absolutely incredible. And so they asked me to design something contemporary, but integrated in that building. So that means that I propose to have a twisted surface, a twisted volume for the counter in plastic, because the 50s were the heroic time of the plastic. And we propose that we discuss about the colors with them, and they propose me to refer to a fresco by Picasso on the back, here. This is a big because in this building we have a lot of piece of art. Yes, so this wall is a huge fresco by Picasso of 50 square meters, and in one part of this fresco we have an orange. So we propose to have the counter orange with the same color. We had to design a seat because we wanted to. We had to propose seats, and I proposed to design seats. So I proposed to have a normal seat like chauffeurs, and to have a double one, but with inverse, to turn this the back of the seat to have a double seat, and to have to make in continuity the back and the seat, to have the extremity, because you can combine the three seats in a way together to make the seats sinewing inside the space. And we had to propose a table, and I designed a table in plastic, which is 3 meters long, 70 centimeters wide, and with these little tiny legs underneath. But all the strength of the table is doing by the folding underneath of the surface. And they wanted to have a paper basket and an ashtray. This time it was still ashtray, now it's forbidden. And we folded aluminum that we polished in a certain way to make confusing the folds and to create another perception of the surface of this paper basket and this ashtray. And an art gallery asked me a box, a place for storage. And I designed a box, and this box could be open by sliding apart, or open that way. That means lifting the other part. So this is an aluminum box, and inside is my usual orange-red. And recently, we have been asked by an artist who invited 30 of his friends, artists, architects, designers, etc., to do an object. And this artist is from Madagascar, and to do an object for having altogether one box of 60 centimeters by 60 centimeters by 30 centimeters high. And I proposed because I was the only architect, to do a children's toy house. And in reference to this house in Madagascar, which has up on long legs with a little round surface object to cut the way for the animals and the insect, and to have it deconstruct with the roof, the body of the home, of the house, and the legs. And when they did the exhibition in Paris, the children started to build with a house that towers. And at the beginning of this year, we did also a setting for an art gallery in the fair. And it's an art gallery which is which has only very abstract artists, and we propose them to have a very cubical, which is not usual for me, but a cubical system with a white wall and a black wall to exhibit the art, and to have a black cube in the middle, because usually art gallery and fair needs to have a storage, and the storage is a place in the middle with some cubes behind and a little sits on the back of the cube, of the black cube, but it's okay, it's a detail. The art gallery where I worked at the very beginning, that I show you in the beginning, has a dog. And the dog, when we finished the renovation of the gallery, he wanted to bring back the dog basket. And I said, no, it's not possible. So we proposed him to design a basket for the dog. And we measure the dog, sitting, lift, going up, etc., ending, etc. And Victor's really love his house, and it's black. And it's true, it's really, he lives there, believe me. And it's in aluminium bubble. And we designed for them, a bird's cage in wood. And this is a sort of a, this is a piece that we did for the gallery to which we did the box. It's, they sent us a pair of shoes from Feiwei, this Chinese brand, where they asked us to do something with the shoes. And we proposed to have this, we deconstruct the shoe, one of the shoes, and we rebuilt it with like pipistrella? You say that? No. Yes, a pipistrella? No. What? A bat. A bat flying above the print of the shoe on the floor. Thank you.